All day. Most steps I know. Right there.
Fancy meeting you. Yeah. Hi. Good.
Oh, man.
Why? Oh, yeah. Steve. Jill. Oh. I know, I'll put it in my coffee.
Smell really good.
Yeah, thank you. Did you win? No. Maybe. Couple little things. I didn't have any.
All right, good evening, everyone. I am Mayor Petrella. We have with us from District 2, Lisa Robinson. District 3, Betty Reznicki, and from District 4, Joe Mulholland. We also have our city manager with us, Francis Robustelli. And so what we're going to do tonight is we broke up about 3 stages. The first, we have with us James Berry from Candid Appraisals. James is an appraiser. He's going to talk about the FEMA 50/50 rule and how to navigate that with an appraisal. James has been doing this for 15 plus years, over 1,000 FEMA appraisals. So you're in good hands and expertise with James here. Then we're going to talk about trash pickup and debris pickup and kind of where we are with that, what the plan is going forward. And then the third thing we're going to talk about is how to complete the FEMA 50/50 package. So if you're applying for permit to rebuild your home, to get back in as quickly as possible, we're going to talk about through that process, exactly what you need to know, where to get the package, how to fill it out, and all the nuances from that. So I appreciate you all being here. So first we'll have James. He's going to do a quick presentation, and then we'll also, he's going to be with us for a little bit so we can do a little bit of Q&A session with James. So if you have any specific questions about your home, your valuation appraisals, how to complain to FEMA, we can tackle that as well before we go into the other 2 topics. So thank you all for being here tonight. We'll just hold your questions to the end of the presentation, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Hi, folks. Good evening. Thanks for being here. My goal here is to just give you a primer, help you understand a little bit better some of your options, and to, I'm sorry you guys have gone through some of these tough times. I know a lot of you obviously are here because your home has been damaged. We went through this a few years ago when Ian came in. I have offices up the coast here in Pinellas. Actually, Greg is my appraiser here in Pinellas County, just right here. Hi, Greg. If you guys interact with our company, we'll be speaking with him primarily. But we understand what it's like to go through this wide-scale destruction. So I want to give you a little bit of a primer on what FEMA's thinking, how they do their calculations, and then ultimately what some of your options are. So just to cover it, there's really two sides to FEMA. One side of FEMA is the substantial damage. Substantial damage is when your home has been damaged to the point to which FEMA will have limitations on a rebuild. Some of the homes that come into this is really when you've had incredible structural damage, you've had things that are not repairable, or if they are repairable, it will be at an extensive, super. But what we're really focusing on today is going to be the 50% substantial improvement. So, in order to limit financial exposure to flood events, FEMA limits the improvement value within established flood zones to 50% of the actual cash value. If you have damage to your home, or if you're in a flood zone without being damaged, FEMA has guidelines to which they can limit their exposure. So there's a rating system in which your flood is the basis of the cost of your flood insurance. The more compliant that the jurisdiction is, the better your rating system is. The way that they use, they use the 50% rule to come and basically draw a line. Now, the way that they determine what your 50% value is, this is the $1 million question, is that the structure and anything connected to the structure. So in county records, there are typically 3 numbers. The first number is your market value. Market value includes everything. It's what a typical buyer is probably going to pay for your home. The other 2 numbers would be land value, and then the third number would be your improved value. So the improved value is essentially your home, its structure, built new, and then depreciated. Okay? Things that are not included in the FEMA, in that FEMA 50% number: pools, your shed, a detached carport, a mother-in-law suite that's not attached to the property, something of that nature. There are 2 ways for everyone to understand this. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have received FEMA letters, which give you a value. Nobody has? Great. I'll show you how to see at least the most recent version that they've been released in a couple of slides. This will help you out. So the county or the jurisdiction, in this case, Pinellas, on their appraisal website has a little slide that I'll show you that'll tell you what that number is. 50% of that number is the upper threshold or the limit for any improvement. Okay, so when you go in to submit a permit, whatever that number is, cut in half, that's the limit that you can put towards your home. Okay? The great part about this is it's free, and you could get it tonight by going to the website, Pinellas County website, and downloading it. One of the issues with these numbers is oftentimes they're based on dated numbers. We saw when there was a huge fluctuation during the 22-23 where building prices doubled and tripled, that oftentimes the county would not accommodate for those. They're a little bit behind. This is not specific to this, it's market wide. It happens a lot. People don't want their tax bill to be higher, right? So they typically, us, myself included, would rather have them err on the low side of valuation than the high side. Unfortunately, when it comes to FEMA, it's important for us to try and get the maximum value that we possibly can so that we can do as many improvements as well. The second way to do it is through a private appraisal. When the county does it, they do a mass valuation. They don't take into specific issues. So if you've redone the kitchen, your flooring, your electric, you have a new bathroom tile, you have a lot of things that, not all of those are non-permitted items, but some non-permitted items and improvements that you've done, painted the house, gone through it, those are not accounted for because there's not really a record for it. So the 2 issues that county numbers have: 1, sometimes they're behind on their calculations. 2, they don't take into consideration your improvement. Now, one of the biggest questions I've been asked when we talk about FEMA improvements as far as it relates to private appraisals. The number that the appraisal is going to give is the pre-storm number. Okay, so I see some shaking heads. Yes, this is a good question because once the house is, free of drywall, mold, free of water, however you want to say that, it obviously has a lower cost. So we'll get to that in a minute, but I just wanted to answer that ahead of time. So the best part about the private appraisal is you're going to get the maximum number that you deserve. Okay. If you have enough with what I'm about to show you, there's a time and a money effort. Sometimes you just want to go with that. And if you have the budget for it, some of these renovations aren't taking as much as you think. That's the way to go. If you do not have that budget and you want to ascertain if there is a higher threshold for you, that's what a private appraisal is. This is a beautiful house in Pinellas. And on the toolbar on the right-hand side, if you expand the toolbar, it'll say FEMA letter. Okay? Everyone knows how to navigate to the FEMA or to the Pinellas County website. That's where you can open that up and it will tell you the exact number. It'll tell you, this one will tell you 3 numbers: the value of pools and the things that aren't included, the value of the land, and then the value that you have for FEMA. Okay, so this is, before you do anything, this is a number that you should know. If you do a private appraisal, one of the things that really helps out is because it is a pre-storm value. Any photographs that you have prior to the storm, we need them. If you have them, if you have your aunt was over for Christmas last year and you have her in the photo, that's fine. We just need to have an idea. The more detail that we have, the more updates that you can include, the better it's going to be on your final value. Second piece, recent renovations. The more detail that you have, I think we did our AC in 2022 and the water heater here, and these flooring, it's only 4 years old when LVL came out. And, all of these details are very important. They add to the final determination. So if there have been renovations, big picture here, there will be a positive effect on your actual cash value, FEMA number. Okay. Now, one of the things that does hurt this, sometimes we have really homes that haven't been updated, homes that are on the water from the 50s. You guys haven't had a lot of storms here. This big surge recently. And some homes have been owned for years and years and years and years. Not a lot has been done. There maybe, have been a vacation home that's gone through generations and it has been decimated. It's been gutted. It's been had catastrophic damage. There are some homes that will have a very difficult time obtaining a suitable value to restore. It may be time for that home to have a new use. Okay, this is a tough part of having storm damage. So I'm telling you, that's one of the things that we have run into already. The back of the house is blown out. The foundation is shattered. It's going to be hard, and it's a 60s home, 50s home. It's going to be hard to recreate that. So we are here to help you in the best way that we can. If you need a private appraisal, but we're also going to be honest. At some point, there may be needed a new use for the home. Okay. Timing. Right now we have an exceptional number of appraisals that we're working through. This is just for if you choose to do a private appraisal. Our lead time is growing. It's growing a lot because we're very inundated right now. We need pre-storm photos, list of repairs, have those prepared if you do want to attain your maximum value. And then we usually charge $800, but for storm damaged homes, we're charging $650 to start. If it's really complicated, it's 10,000 square feet. If it's your standard home, this is what we're charging to get that number, the maximum that you can find, so you can take it through permitting. If it's a condo complex, we do commercial. If there's duplexes, those types of things are a little bit more complicated to take a little bit more time. Those will obviously be quoted. Okay. You can go to our website, get a little bit more information. On top of it, candidappraisals.com, candidappraisals.com. At the top of it is a link. It says, request a quote. Very easy. Click it, enter all your information. Our phone is, it's almost too busy to answer right now. So our best way is to be we have a lot of homes that we're already processing. So if you do need help, go to our website instead of giving us a call, and we will follow up with you as soon as we possibly can to get you any assistance that you need on this perspective. Anybody have any questions? Is there any way I can help you? Yes.
When we get our appraisal, then what do we do with it?
So they're gonna go over the application process. There's actually, within Pinellas County, there's a sheet that needs to be filled out. And it's part of the submission packet that you give to permitting.
And is it done digitally, or do I have to submit my 50-page report?
It's a great question. You know the answer?
We'll cover that question when we go to the actual permit.
Yeah. Yes.
If we get a new appraisal and it goes up $100,000, will it affect our tax base?
That's a great question. So though permitting and tax talk, this is not a tax appraisal. Okay, so one of the things that you're doing, this is to keep in mind, your home has been brought down in value because it's been damaged, and you are returning it to pre-storm value. So in reality, though there may be some improvements, you wanted that new flooring or that new cabinetry or whatever, you're not really going to be creating a new level of improvement. So when it's considered a repair, I don't see the taxing authority it's not getting this report is not going to taxing authority. So it doesn't have that effect. It goes to permitting and they go, oh, you were damaged, you're coming back. So does that answer your question? Okay, perfect. Yes.
You had a substantial improvement that had nothing to do with storm damage, but you had to fill out the FEMA packet because of the substantial, had an appraisal, all that stuff. And that percentage was whatever, my percentage was 49%.
Okay.
So that means, yes, they approved that. However, now, with the storm damage, it's a second event. And the way that's calculated, if I get my second appraisal now, because now it's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and it has a higher value than it did with the first appraisal, how are you working the math? Or do I only get 1% of the new value? Do I have to do some percentages? Or do I get to put the new value, subtract out the dollar amount of what was in the substantial improvement, and then what's left is the dollar amount to get up to 50%? How does the math
That's a
work?
great question. So I'll let the jurisdiction answer that. So what they talk about in FEMA is a look back period. Okay, so a look back period looks back on what substantial improvements have been
Well,
done.
let's just assume it's within the look back period.
Okay.
So it's in the
Well,
look back.
I think that process is in flux. And so that would
It
be,
is,
that
but
would be
how
a
does the
question that,
math work?
how does the math work? So, I mean, you have a budget. If you have a new appraisal, the new appraisal creates a threshold, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, because each jurisdiction handles it differently. But that threshold, you will have already assumed a portion of that budget. If the budget is improved, there may be an additional amount, but it will not be the full
Dollars
amount.
or percentage?
So if you spent, and Denise, correct me if I'm wrong. So let's say you have your initial letter, FEMA letter said $100,000 and you spent $49,000, right? Because you had 49%, right? So now you get an appraisal and the appraisal says it's $200,000, which means you could spend $100,000. You've already spent $49,000, so you've got $51,000 left.
Okay, so
Is that-
you do it in dollars, not in percentage.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So if your original cost $50,000 and the second round cost $50,000, you
You
should
just add them together. Okay, thank you.
cannot exceed the 50% of the appraised value.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't know if this has been asked already, but how difficult if the appraisal, private appraisal is significantly higher than what the county has on record of their appraisal? How difficult is it to get the county to accept that? Is it automatic? Is it a long process? How does that work?
So that's an easy question. easy answer. When you submit your FEMA package, you check your box, FEMA letter or an appraisal.
Okay.
So whichever one you choose.
All right.
It does not go to the county, it goes to our permitting department.
And if we submit a package now to try to get started and our appraisal comes in higher than we get later, can we send the FEMA package?
You can update it with an appraisal later. It's easier if you just get it done on the front end.
Right.
So if you look at your numbers, right, so let's say again, similar scenario, you have $100,000 on your property value, so you can use $50,000. If your contractor comes in at $47,000, get the appraisal. You're better off having that cushion, because what happens is you turn into the walls and you find something else. Now all of a sudden, now you've got to stop. You've got to get an appraisal, which will take a couple of weeks, right? Then you have to resubmit an amended package, which has to go to the permitting process. Just do, if it gets close, just do it right in the beginning.
Thanks.
Mayor, can I add one thing on that? Because in a project, and just because I've had experience, I've had to do the FEMA packet before, you still have to give a contingency. So your amount when you submit initially still had a contingency for what the mayor is explaining, that if something were to happen, you need a new beam, and like, heaven forbid, you know, when you're opening up your home, you should have a contingency in your amount when you're submitting a packet.
10%.
There's a 10% contingency that you have to calculate into your value. And I've factored that $47,000, I factored that already in. So that would be 100% of the actual cost. But if it looks like you might be getting close to that 50%, again, it's easier in the beginning if you just get the appraisal.
Thanks.
If your person is higher than the value that tax the property, and we submit the appraisal, will that actually increase the taxes that we pay yearly?
No,
Okay.
It
Sorry,
shouldn't.
I just came, I didn't know.
oh, that's okay. They just, the question was just asked, but yes, you shouldn't have to worry about it. Yes.
Yeah.
If the list of repairs is under 50%, but fairly close to it, but the homeowner decides to bring the house up to code, meaning probably the elevator, and decides to go ahead and do that, they can just bypass all this and just go directly to the permitting process.
Correct.
If you're elevating your home, if you're bringing it into the compliance, then you don't have to worry
Write the
about
permit and start, okay.
Which is your flood zone level plus 1 foot. 5 feet. It's 5 feet here?
1 foot.
1 foot.
5 foot base flood elevation plus 1.
Yes, yes, there you go. Yes,
Two questions, both pretty easy. One, you said.
I like those.
Carbon filters, are included, but the screen eyes are not. What's the difference?
So if it's attached to the truss, it can be included, but if you have a freestanding screen, it wouldn't be included.
It's a flat roof attached to.
Yeah, it needs to be structurally attached. So if it's a metal tin roof that you have like a couple things hooking onto it, it wouldn't be counted. If it's a carport that's not integrated into the property itself, it wouldn't be included.
Even though the one I shows on my picture.
Yeah.
The property.
Yeah, it depends on case by case. So we would look at it as we can. I mean, if it can be included, we'll include it.
Second question is, what about a monthly bed that's attached to the wall?
So when what we do is we'll go through the house, we'll look at the quality, we'll look at the improvements, we'll look at the living area, and we'll recreate it new. So a Murphy bed is probably not going to have a real impact on the overall value, because we'll use we have a value system that we develop based on quality. And so that's not going to be a line item that's added to. Anything that can be removed in a day typically is considered personal property, and a Murphy bed might be more of an appeal issue, like, oh, it's appealing as opposed to a value or cost issue.
So you just triggered the third question.
Is it easy as well?
Well, I think so. So you could remove a refrigerator in the day or a dishwasher. in
Yeah,
the day.
so it depends on the jurisdiction. We always include a line item, a separate piece that includes the cost of appliances. In Florida, they're typically considered fixtures or a part of it. In North Carolina, they're not guaranteed. So here we include a separate piece that allows the jurisdiction to choose whether they include it. Most of the time they do. Yes.
I have a question on this 30%, 10%, 20% when I went up to pull a permit. So if I want to lay tile and tile costs me 20,000, I'm supposed to give the city $6,000 contingency? Do I get that back? Or what is that $6,000 doing? Because I don't think that's fair.
You're not giving anyone any money, right? So if you get an
That's
estimate,
not what the girl.
if you get an estimate, right, the bid from a contractor.
Yeah.
And the bid is $50,000. When you fill out your FEMA package, and again, we'll talk about this in detail when we talk about the FEMA application, you have to add a 10% overage.
I am a contractor.
Mhm.
I live here. I'm gonna do the work myself.
This is what FEMA requires. It's not something the city is making us do. This is, when you fill out a FEMA package, it has a line item that says you must add to your cost 10% for overage. Whether you do it yourself,
Okay.
whether you have a contractor do it.
What's the 20% for?
I'm not sure what 20% is.
We'll talk about
Okay,
that.
so we'll talk about that. That's if you're doing the work yourself.
Yeah.
Denise will cover that.
We'll get to that shortly.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm just curious
Good
because
question.
I've never charged anybody. If I did a job for you for $100,000, I put 20% profit and overhead, maybe. Now they're telling me I gotta put 30% on? I'm not gonna have a job.
Well, you're the one honest contractor we have. Thank you for that.
Well, it does.
So let's finish with the appraisal. Talk about the FEMA.
Okay.
Any other FEMA? Yes.
Am I correct in thinking that you get the FEMA letter which states a significant certain percentage of damage or a certain amount of damage? Well, then there's that FEMA letter, but then there's the adjuster FEMA letter that comes out
Yes.
with a particular amount of damage. And that is the basis for that 50% rule in addition to.
No, so there's two sides of the same. Okay, so this is where it gets a little confusing. I'll just try and draw clarity here. FEMA will come by your house and what they're doing is they're going, did this house get damaged more than 50%? It's kind of a yes or no type of thing. So if you get something that says 40%, you're fine to approve. If financially feasible and it makes sense to you, you have that option. If FEMA comes into it and goes, this is 70% damage, we see substantial damage, then that's not a good newsletter. So it's different than what we're talking about here.
Correct, but that 70%, so say they come back and say it's 70% damage, but I can find a contractor to do it for 45% of what the value was, and I have them fill out that FEMA worksheet, send that into the packet, and that becomes the new basis for that 50% rule, correct?
So just on Monday, we had a 2.5 hour long presentation on exactly answering this question. There's an appeals process you have to go through if FEMA determines you're more than 50% substantially damaged. And so maybe we can address it if we have time this evening. If not, I know it's 2.5 hours, but we did spend a significant amount of time discussing just that. Yes, sir.
I'm just curious, everything is hinging on these substantial damage reports, which I've heard no one get. So I know multiple neighbors that are requesting permits, they're not getting them. They have plenty of room. If you just go look at the FEMA letter, it's pretty obvious that somebody in the city could even look at it and say, oh, you got plenty of room. So everything really is coming down to who and when they're gonna get these substantial damage reports. And when I watched the video from Tradewinds, FEMA was saying this is all on the city. So who's doing it?
This
And
was one of the things that we covered on Monday. Everyone will receive a certified letter in the mail, right?
when,
And the assessments are done.
which is when? Because, right, I mean, in a year, because nobody can start their work until we get those letters, and it's already been over a month and we don't have any letters, so.
Mayor, I think it'd be helpful to
Yeah,
clarify,
let's finish.
this piggybacks on that.
Okay.
That I just wanted to help clarify for Monday night, it's not actually FEMA coming around sending these letters out, it's the third party that's contracted by the
It's a
city.
consultant.
Yeah, it's not.
Haggerty or one of the yours.
No, FEMA lays down the laws, they come to the city and put pressure on the city to make sure that nobody rebuilds their house until it's approved. Otherwise, if the city allows people to start rebuilding their homes without permits, then FEMA comes back to the city and say, you better have this fixed or you're not gonna get funding. So FEMA is the one that dictates this stuff. They put pressure onto the city and it's the city's job to get the stuff done. So when is it gonna get done?
When Haggerty's done, right?
How can I get a
Had a problem with that in Sarasota, did they? Yeah.
So we'll address that question when we get to the FEMA application. Well, that's,
This is a two-part presentation.
Yes, yes, yes.
three-part presentation, so. Let's stick with the appraisal questions for now, and then we'll get back to the FEMA.
I had I was putting for an improvement on my house, and I had already did the appraisal, it's on file with Kristen or whatever. But I went in, I'm already did my repairs, and I found out you have to have a permit to do sheetrock. I'm with Red Tag people, so.
Right.
I don't know. I'm that guy didn't know, so I'm already dried sheetrock in, cabinets are sitting there. I'm not touching it until I get my permit. But it's not that much damage. If you look at what's on the tax roll, yeah, it is substantial, but what you have from 6 months ago that I filed when I was gonna do improvement, but the setback didn't work. You guys denied it, but I'm waiting I didn't know I've been calling every day because I'm living on a soap in my office because you guys are keeping me from my house. It's pretty pathetic that I'm having a city dictate your bureaucracy of how you're handling it is substandard. It really is. And I'm getting a little frustrated. I just talked to the land use attorney and I'm trying to figure out where I'm gonna go. Because I just want answers and I call the city every day.
Yeah. Would you have a question for the appraiser?
The appraisal, when you gonna come out and appraise my house, what can I do? I mean, I got appraisals. I mean, do I need to get an appraisal? Because on your tax roll, I'm gonna be over 50%. It's gonna cost about 70 grand.
Yes.
I have it. I have it with the city. Can you just move it from one desk to the other here?
An appraisal?
Yeah. I just put it with a pack for variance. It's in this office.
So if you're gonna be over 50%, the only opportunity you have is to get an appraisal. to
You
see
have
the
one on
structural
file here.
lines.
You have one on file here.
Okay. If it's within a year, we can
Yeah,
utilize
it's
it.
a couple months.
Okay.
And I've been trying to get answers. I call every day, show up here, drive across the bridge, try to get here. Getting a little irritated.
So one of the things we discussed on Monday was, right, we've got 3,000 to 4,000 damaged homes. We have the same amount of staff that we had a month and a half ago. We're onboarding 18 new staff next week, Tuesday. Okay, so we'll be able to get moving faster on these things. So if you're expecting us, again, I know you don't want to hear this. I know this is not the answer you're looking for. This is the answer that it is, whether we like it or not. I don't like it. I'm not expecting you to like it either. The reality is, a month and a half ago, it took 90 days to get a permit. We had the same amount of staff that we had then. We've moved our staff to 6 days a week, to longer hours, right? So the easiest, fastest way to get a response, because the amount of volume of phone calls and emails we're receiving is not manageable. And so if you call, most likely you won't be able to get through to somebody because we've restricted the hours now that we can handle phone calls, that we can handle emails. So the fastest way to get a response is to send us an email. Anything electronic, we can then process those faster, right? Because otherwise what happens, you're gonna call and that person is gonna spend an hour on the phone with you and not be able to process anything else. Now that'll change on the 14th, but until Tuesday, that is what we're operating under.
You have enough with inspectors?
We're hiring, so if you look at, we look at a breakdown of how many people we're hiring building inspectors, permit processing people, right? It's not just one thing, right? We need the full, from beginning to end. We need somebody to process the application, the permits, somebody to inspect it, somebody to sign off on the CO and the back of it.
Can we talk on the permit next rather than?
So let's finish with the appraisals. If
Any
you
other
have any
appraisal
more questions on the
questions?
appraisals, yes, ma'am.
Just wanted to confirm that independent appraisal, we gotta be under 50%. We're waiting on a letter from the city to determine if we're substantial. If I wanna take the opportunity to do improvements, that is included under the 49% or 50%, correct?
So if you want to make repairs, right? And then
Like, if I wanna redo the kitchen or move a bathroom, that is included.
basically all the renovation you're doing has to stay under 50%.
Okay. And I
all of
shouldn't do anything till I submit a FEMA packet and we get the letter because we may have to.
But one of the requirements is, right, so we've posted the things you can do without a permit. If it's not on that list, you have to have a permit. That is one of the things also that FEMA grades municipalities on.
Right.
right? If we stick to the process that we had in place before the storm, we're good. If we amend the process randomly haphazardly, that can then impact our insurance rating, which can then impact everybody's ability to get insurance at a future date.
Where do we get
So
that
I'm
list?
trying to do everything right,
Of
getting
course.
estimates, getting
So-
quotes, that no work's been done,
Yeah, you
because I
can fill
wasn't
out,
sure what I could do.
sure. You can fill out your FEMA package right away, submit that to the permitting office, and then that will get processed in the order that they receive. Any further questions for James? Yes, ma'am.
When you were talking about what's included in the appraisal, you said that it's different in each municipality. In this one, are appliances included? So like if, I've heard that if you turn the house upside down, what falls out is not included. So like my refrigerator would have fallen out. Is that included or not?
Are those included in the value here?
Luke, you know,
I think they are, but I'm not sure. They're not?
A plug-in appliance, not being.
They're not. Okay, so that's why we provide a line item.
Okay, so no refrigerator, but if no stove, but if your stove was built in, then it counts.
Yeah, if you have a built-in appliance, then that would be counted towards.
If it's built in.
Is that a hardwire?
Well,
Appliance?
If it's built in, it would be hardwired because
Correct.
there wouldn't be any access to the plug.
Okay.
So we're gonna take two more questions.
Can we apply through the internet, or do we have to submit the package physically and fill it up and bring
We're
it?
gonna talk about how to fill out the FEMA package in the next presentation. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks for being here. If I'm understanding correctly, if we get a private appraisal and we still don't meet the amount that we would need to repair our homes, there are 4 options, is that right? Appeal, move your house somewhere else, tear it down or elevate? Is that
I
right?
cover that in the FEMA package application.
Yes, is a short answer.
Yeah.
Just to, and for you to clarify just a second, because she was asking for evaluation on the appraisal, but what Luke is explaining is the FEMA value on the packet. And I think those two things are separate. I think you were asking for jurisdiction included that value, which is I think what you were asking,
About the
not whether it's
appliances.
included, yeah. the
Okay,
appliances.
yes, okay.
So, because that's two separate things, I believe, it's not part of the valuation that you're not sure.
There will be, we handle many jurisdictions, so when we put into our appraisal, we will have an appliance number in there, and that's up to your jurisdiction to decide.
If it's included in the 50%, it might be included as a valuation, but not included in the
Yeah,
50%.
So some exclude that.
So that's why I wanted to make sure you.
Okay.
All right, we want to thank James for being here tonight. Great, raise your hand, he's gonna be here for a little while, so if you have any questions, you can tag him. And he'll be able to answer those for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Luke.
Good evening. My name is Denise Anderson. I'm the Community Development Director. For those of you that have been at the last several commission meetings or community meetings, we probably talked, you've seen several of our presentations. Tonight's agenda is pretty limited in scope to the FEMA packet. Clearly, there's a lot of questions about structure valuation and those things. That does not mean that we can't take other questions at the end of the Q&A, but we did wish to focus specifically on structure valuations and FEMA packets, because we are, of course, getting a lot of those questions at the time that you have to over the phone. So the questions clearly that you're asking yourself is my home substantially damaged? And if it is damaged, what do I do about it, right? Those are the questions that everybody has on their mind this evening. So we're gonna focus our talk tonight on these topics. So clearly what you've heard from James and what we, hopefully the message that you're receiving tonight is that there are some steps that you can take right now that will prepare you ultimately for decisions that you need to be making. But we encourage you to get all of the information that you can so that you can make informed decisions. I think the most difficult thing about where everybody is right now is the unknown. So we encourage you to gather information. James talked about the FEMA wind loss mitigation letter that is found on the property appraiser's website. I'll show you again how to get that. Just announced today, I'm not familiar with this new opportunity, but the property appraiser has announced that they now have a pre-storm building value reconsideration opportunity. I can't tell you that it would be equivalent to an appraisal or anything else. It is something that you may wish to look at on the property appraiser's website, so I'll share with you how to find that. Of course, consider a private appraisal. I think James has described clearly what the benefits of that may be for you. And then, of course, completing the FEMA packet. Most of our discussion will be on that. And then, requesting an inspection. That's part of this as well. So the FEMA letter, as James said, you can go on the property appraiser's website, pcpao.com, enter your property address. On the right-hand side is a little tools button. It will pop open a window, and shown there in red is the FEMA letter that you can download. Additionally, this new thing is pcpao.com. On the top of the website, click on How Do I tab. It will drop down to a series of FAQ type things, and click on the Find Property Damage FAQs. You'll find in there a whole host of topics. In that, at the bottom of that page, as you scroll down, you'll find the download application for pre-storm building valuation reconsideration. A big name, they're calling it a BDR. And then, of course, the other way to determine a structural value is the appraisal that James so graciously spoke with us about. We are able to take appraisals dated back to September 26, 2023. So if you had an appraisal, you acquired your property at that time, we can accept appraisals, generally speaking, back to that date within 1 year of the event. So I'm going to ask Luke Curtis to come up here. He's our building official. He's going to walk you through the FEMA packet, how to fill it out. I would teach you that I've left a stack of those packets on the back table back there, so help yourself as you walk out. I have more if we run out of those forms. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. We also have some of the FEMA packets up here in the front table too, should anybody need it. So when we're talking about the FEMA packet, there's some pretty basic things on in the packet. Probably the biggest questions are going to be towards the end of it. But when we're looking at the FEMA packet, there's some basic information on the front page, and then we have a 5-year cumulative disclosure statement that comes into play there. It just has to be filled out. Part of that is historical permits. So obviously we have a 5-year look back, so we're going to look at that. Yes, so at the bottom of the sheet, it is required to be notarized. So it's just acknowledging all the criteria involved with. Then it comes to the cost breakdown for the damages. This is the standard FEMA packet that we've used for years. So if you did some improvements previously, this is the same packet that would have been filled out. So it's just, this is an itemization of costs for the project that's going on. It just goes through the gamut of everything. Now, not everything is going to apply to your specific project, but you can just go through it and you can put the details in where it's required. And again, this is just more detail here, going through mechanical system, plumbing systems, electrical, gas, etc. So we get to the bottom page, and there's the 2 points that are most notable. Are the 10% contingency and the 20% profit overhead. So the 10% contingency, look at this from the perspective that that's the unforeseen. That's the rotted beams that you uncover when you start your remodel project. It's your floor trusses that are rotted out from termites or water damage over the years. It's those unforeseen things that can't just be ignored once you get into the project. If you're a contractor, this would typically take the form of a change order at some point in the project with the customer. But this, we're trying to incorporate that possibility of a change order into the form itself. Because any of you that have hired a contractor to do work, a good portion of the times there are change orders, there are extra expenses that are incurred. So it's trying to cover for that. The 20% profit and overhead is a way to balance things out. So look at it from this example. If we have two homes, identical homes, they receive the same damage. One has the means to do the work themselves, and they're discounting everything and using a different price than the second home. Second home, they don't have the ability to physically do the work, do the permitting themselves. They have to hire a contractor. In the one instance where the contractor is hired, the expenses exceed 50%. And now they've got to elevate the home, demolish it, whatever the options are there. Whereas the other one, because they're discounted, they never put in the sweat equity in, they get away with it. So this, I don't mean get away with it, but you understand the point. They are being looked at differently. So they aren't being held to the same standard as the other one. So the 20% is a way to balance that. The damages are the same, so we're just trying to make sure that everybody's treated the same way. If that makes sense.
That's not really what's happening, right?
So Luke, I think the question is that a requirement as a building owner that you put a 20% overhead profit figure in there, and who is requiring it?
So that is ultimately, that's, you know, the FEMA guidelines are, we have to look at everything equally. So. I'm sorry.
If I'm pulling my own permits by myself, right? I'm line item everything, gonna line item everything to Home Depot, Lowe's, give you all that stuff, because you can't argue with that. Indeed.com, salary basis,
Like $18 an hour.
but I also have the option to sub things out, right? So if I hire a tile person for 2,000, I put that into this, their profit and overhead's already in that.
Yeah.
So are we double dipping now? Or am I cutting that price up? Because you want that subcontractor in there. Also, with the 10%, you say unforeseen, but my entire house is down to the studs, floor to ceiling, there's no unforeseens.
I was just using that as an illustration.
Why are we still required to do some of that?
But
And I'm laying my own tile.
It's a blanket rule for everyone, which is not a blanket rule for everyone.
So
Right.
we have to look at everyone the same way. Because, well, with this form, that's what it's, now granted, one size does not necessarily fit all. But the way this was,
You're interrupting,
Please
let him
finish
answer.
Speaking so you can actually answer your question. Thank you.
nothing in life is perfect, right? But this form was created in such a manner to try to make it as fair and as even, as equal, no matter what the scenario is.
If you hired a general contractor, he's marking up the subcontractor. Subcontractors still get paid the same amount, and then the GC's marking it up at the end. This is just the GC markup and fee.
Yeah, I might be able to help y'all out. but
Add it on.
I had to go through filling out a FEMA packet. Building a couple years ago, and so, the way that you end up, the way that you cannot end up having the 20% markup in there twice is that you get your subs to give you the price and the markup separately. And so the price goes on the itemized FEMA list, their profit goes on the 20%. Is that correct?
Yes.
We should be listing the material.
So you don't have to, if you get a subcontractor to do tile, and he tells you it's gonna be $18,000 to do your tile, you don't have to put that $18,000 on the tile line item, you can put the materials and labor on the line item and his profit on the 20% profit line item. So
That's how you should do it.
so you're not double marking it up, right?
But if you're doing the work yourself, why, I'm not charging myself profit and overhead. I'm buying the tile and now I'm putting it in. I still don't understand why I have to pay a 20% profit. Are you guys licensed and insured? You know, I'm being an asshole.
Well, I understand truly. So I think one of the most difficult challenges for certainly me to get my head around as we go through this process is that we also have to calculate and include DIY labor, donated labor from friends and family. All of that has to be applied with a market rate. And in the end, that goes into, yes, it goes into the calculation of the 50%. We really have no options there. But do keep in mind that that doesn't necessarily mean that is what you're going to pay out of your pocket. So to your point, sir, you are going to be doing your own labor. So in the end, what you pay yourself is probably with a hot meal at the end of the day and a broken back, right?
Yep.
But unfortunately, we are required to consider that labor, the cost of your labor or somebody equivalent to you that you would have to pay in the FEMA calculation. It's the rules of FEMA, it is the process we must follow, but I just wish for you to recall that, or remember that, it does not mean that's how much you're going to spend, but it's a requirement of that calculation because they have to be looked at with parity, and all of those things are subject to audit and review. So it's a process that we have to go through. It's a hard pill to swallow. I completely get it. My husband's a builder. I understand. But those are the rules that we are governed by, and those are the rules, therefore, we must follow. So do keep that in mind. If DIY labor, you're welcome to use that, right? If you got folks that are gonna help you out, your friends, your family, all of that's going to help you on the back end, what comes out of your pocket. Unfortunately, it has to be built into the calculation. Is that helpful at least to understand what, so calculation is different than what you pay, perhaps, okay?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Why, when I pull up the Pinellas County floodplain cost breakdown, they only have 10% for their owner builder minimum overhead?
I'm not sure. I didn't create this. I didn't create this one that we have.
I'm just asking, because that's the big
Yep.
disparity, 10%, 20%. For some people, it could be a big difference.
Who did write this? Is this written by St. City, some city of St.
The
Pete?
question would be, how do we get to this 20% from FEMA, and where does that show up? Because I did not see that in any of the documents I read. As a matter of fact, it says, if the work will be done by a contractor, the contractor's overhead and profit must be included. If the work will be done by the owner or volunteer, market rates must be used to estimate the cost of materials and the value of labor. Nowhere does it say the profit and overhead of a owner or volunteer. Just point that out.
Say that.
So what I can do is I'll look into their numbers and their template, and I'll also look, do some history on this one. I don't know who created this one.
Right, and
but I'll dig into it.
Perfect, because I pulled up Fort Myers and I pulled up Lee County, and neither one of them have a percentage on it. And if I want to be transparent on where we're getting this number from, the percentage.
Let me just say, because I've had to fill out the packet before, the reason why I think it was, and it's not hit Luke, because Luke wasn't here the whole time. We've had other building officials here, right? So was that the 20% was a simplified version of how we can determine the market value for labor. Instead of you say, well, this contractor does 20, that one does 30, the other one does 10. And, I just give my contractor dinner every night, So I think the 20%, you can go back and figure out the history of why we got to it, but I believe that it was, FEMA does require a market value. So let me finish. So again,
Sir, I'm gonna ask you
municipalities.
to let them speak.
The
When you have a
municipality,
question, we'll let you speak as well. Thank you.
the municipalities, regardless of whether it's Fort Myers Beach, Sarasota, or the counties, have to either have a list of market value or a percentage. Everybody can do it different ways. It could be messier, it might not. But I think that's why we did it that way.
Is it fair to say that the estimate for all of my contracted work to repair my home to be under the 49 or 50%, wherever it ends up, needs to be at the subtotal line because I have to pad it with 30% on top of that? Is that accurate? Is that what you're saying?
Correct, so the total would have to be 49% or lower.
That's if you do the work yourself. If you don't do if you have a contractor, then you're adding the 10% overage.
Okay, so if I have a contractor, I'm not including the 20, that's only if I was a contractor.
If you were doing the work yourself, yes.
But if it is a FEMA requirement, how come there are the two municipalities that the lady just read, they don't have it? If it's FEMA, you should be for the whole United States, right?
I can't answer to the other municipalities.
No, I understand that, but if it's FEMA who's requiring, how come only we have, we gotta explain.
And then we can.
Well, we're not the only ones that have it. But I can do some research into the numbers that we use to make sure that that is justified or realistic.
Well, in the meantime, what do we do? Because I had to fill out this form. What do I do? Do I wait until you decide that it's right to do it? Or do I have to go ahead and ignore that?
So for the time being, until we can make a justification to change that, that's the form that we have in place.
Are your numbers close right now?
I already know my numbers, because I'm getting something, but I get so many different information from all over the country. You know, I came to the meeting on Monday, you were there in the library, and then I came here after that. You know, and I got discordant information from contractors, and honestly, I don't know what to do. You know, I've been in Florida, I came from Italy in 34 years ago, and I never found myself in a situation like this. Nobody can give me an answer straight. In my house, it's a mess, you know, I got pots and pans all over the place, I'm sleeping on the floor. I don't have a shower, I shower outside, and the only thing that I hear here is that, well, we have to determine what it's going to be, and we'll let you know when we will.
You don't have to wait on any of that.
I
You
know,
can get, you can get your contractor, you can get bids, you can submit the FEMA package. Once your contractor submits the bids, you have the FEMA letter or you have an appraisal. You'll know if you're gonna be close or not. And if you're not close, then this whole conversation, it shouldn't stop you from moving forward.
so I do not need any pre-inspection to do the work and go through the
You're not
numbers.
gonna do any work until you get a permit, right?
No, I
But in the
understand.
meanwhile, you can get a contractor, you can get the bids going, right? Or if you're gonna do the work yourself, you can fill out the FEMA package and you can list, here's all the work that I'm going to be doing, right? And then you'll know if you're gonna be close at 50% line or not. And if you're not close to the 50%, then once the permit is approved, you can start moving forward.
So
You never asked this question, answer his question about a pre-construction inspection.
It is not a requirement for you to start filling out your FEMA application. You can start filling out your application tomorrow.
Can we do it through the internet, or do we have to physically come over here and bring it, that's what I was asking before, and I was told that it's going to be addressed now.
You can download it, print it out, fill it out,
So it has to
email
be-
it back to us or drop it off at City Hall.
So it has to be brought physically here.
You can print it, you can save it, you can fill it out, you can email it to us, or you can bring it in physically.
Okay, thank you.
We have 3 notary on staff in the city clerk's office as well. There is some places where it will be has to be notarized, so it's convenient for you. If you're dropping it off, you can get it notarized here.
We're trying to get you back in as quickly as possible, right? So that's why we're having these town hall sessions, so we can answer these questions. There's no reason for you to wait on anything at this point. Get your numbers, get your bids in, submit that package.
I lost my roof in Debbie. I figured out a contractor, I've given him a deposit for my roof. He's required to fill out a FEMA packet, but the roof is rated to 200 miles an hour, should not apply to the FEMA 50% rule. Do we still need to, because I had to go get all this notarized, and he said it keeps coming back to him, and he's had to submit 39 documents. I still don't have a roof. I know we've got more rain coming tomorrow.
So it gets complicated. So for the roof itself, so it's just the roof covering that blew off, correct?
Have a new roof put on.
So that is, in essence, that is exempt. It doesn't count towards the 50%.
But I was told I still have to fill out the FEMA packet.
Yes, so part of that is, before we release a permit for a roof, which is exempt, we wanna make sure the structure isn't substantially damaged. Because the last thing we wanna do is, yeah, go ahead and do your roof and then say, oh, no, you're substantially damaged. So we've gotta get that substantial damage estimate or inspection done, get through that process. In the meantime, if there's other damages that occurred at the house, then you can apply for those permits also. That'll give us the other picture or pieces to the puzzle, so we can see the whole thing.
Okay, so in the meantime, I've had my house tarped 3 times for $3,000 a pop. Insurance is covering one of them. It's tarped now. We've got another storm coming in tomorrow. I really want to get my roof done. So I understand this is gonna take a while. When do you prioritize? Come out and do my report so I can get my roof covered?
Yeah, and we are doing that. So I've got a list of properties where we're going out. So we have the third party that is out doing the substantial damage estimates that are through the county, and they're going through the city. I don't have a date on when that's gonna be complete or when I'm gonna get that data. But we are doing them ourselves also. For instances like this, you need a roof on your house because we don't want water intrusion in and to create more damage. So we can do that. So
I've already had a private appraiser come out. I've already have my private appraisal here. It's 50 pages. That's why I was asking about, can I submit that digitally to you?
Yes.
But that doesn't matter. I still need another report from you before I can move forward with the roof.
So, yeah, with your, if you've got everything else, all the other documents in place and you applied, was there other damages to the house?
Oh, yeah. the
From
whole house
flooding?
is cut 4 down.
Okay, so
I have a GC in place too.
have the GC submit for permitting, have all that documented. The FEMA packet will outline all the damages, all the work that needs to be done. That'll give us the whole picture.
Right, but
And
the
then with that
GC
scenario,
was after Helene. I've already hired the roofer from Debbie, so the roofer has nothing to do with the GC. They're separate people that I already hired to do this and gave them a deposit.
understandable, we just need the whole picture. So once we have that whole picture, then we can release the permit.
Okay, so I can't hand this to somebody tonight and get this done.
What is there?
I know, and the thing is, they
Offices
gave
are
me a
closed,
price too, that
but yeah,
includes
you can
10% over and
get that all filled out and submit it for the, under the permit, and we can process that. And put a note on there to request the potential damages.
Mine's similar to that. We got, water intrusion from Helene, then a week, 2 weeks later, Debbie put the shingles on our roof. That's 2 separate events. Do they all have to be in the same FEMA package, or do you do 2 packages for 2 different events?
No, so we're looking at the whole structure and the money that are going into repairs and improvements. So it's, if the work was done separately, or so when you're talking about the
Totally
roof.
different events,
Yeah.
and is the roof now counted towards my 50%, or is the roof separate? It wasn't in those.
So, yeah, the roofing itself is exempt, but in the scenario where for this lady is in, we have to look at the whole structure to make a determination, is it substantially damaged? Once we get that, then we can move forward.
So does the roofing have to be added in, like when we do the FEMA package, do I have to put that in the FEMA package since it's not part of the?
No. Because,
The roof just will be the.
But we do need a complete assessment of the work that's going into the repairs. This gentleman's had his hand up quite a lot.
Appreciate it. When we fill these out, right, so I'm pretty handy, I can handle pretty much everything myself, but I'm not a builder, I'm not a contractor. Establishing values, when I submit this, it's gonna be your office going and looking at these numbers. Is there an objective standard the city can provide for, I know you can't make it exhaustive, but some of the big ones, drywall, materials and labor, or what labor rate are you looking for? Because I don't want to submit this with the long process and how many are coming in. And then you go, Mr. Irwin, yeah, your numbers are way low, go try again. And then I'm just kind of, okay, well, I'll raise them a little bit. I mean, is there an objective standard the city can provide for the main stuff, kitchen cabinets, doors, drywall, the stuff we're all gonna have to do?
It's difficult to say because there's so many from one contractor to another. If you get 3 contractors in, you might get 3 totally different prices. So it's, I can point you in some direction as far as standards in the industry. And we use a combination of things. We had a spreadsheet that was created, but it came to light that it wasn't accurate. So we're kind of looking at things, the whole picture of things, making sure that we're accurately assessing things. If it's, and I'm throwing numbers out, is it $5 a sheet or $5 a square foot to finish drywall, or is it $15? You know, so we want to make sure that we're looking at it objectively. And with that being said, if somebody is putting a dollar amount and they're justifying it, and they're breaking out how they came out with these figures, we'll take that into consideration and evaluate.
This is detailed, but it's. Would you accept my own spreadsheet built off of these where I can do calculations and explanations like that?
Yep.
Where it's not handwritten, it's one handwritten here. But if I built out an Excel spreadsheet, these categories, put the cost, put the just, the hourly rate, everything, I can just put that with this.
I have a question and an observation, or the question is, just in the process diagram the other night, which was awesome. I didn't see something someone just mentioned, which is a pre-construction inspection. Where does that fit in the process? Is that what Hagerty's doing, or?
No.
Yeah, I think that might have been what they were referring to, is that substantial damage inspection.
They're gonna come to our house and do an inspection.
They are currently going through the city. I don't have access to all their data yet, but I know if I had to put a number to it, maybe they've gone through 10% of the city collecting data. But there's they have teams and teams and teams of people. It's collecting the data, it's inputting it, and then they'll give it to us.
My question is that what someone pre-construction inspection.
Right, so you can request, submit your FEMA packet. You can request an inspection. So once the FEMA packet has been received, the information goes into a tool that we utilize. We can come out then and verify the scope of work is reflected accurately in that FEMA packet. And that would be the inspection that we're referring to. So
We want you all to make sure our contractors.
right, the last thing you want to do is be close to that 50% and then realize some scope of that work is not included in that, and now you're over that mark and you have different decisions to make. So submit the FEMA packet, give us an opportunity to review, request the inspection when you submit it, and then we'll schedule that inspection to go out there. So we have inspectors out there right now that are through the city, and we have 6 additional starting next Tuesday. And then Hagerty and some of their subcontractors, so Tidal Basin, you may see some of those folks out there with logo shirts. They're out there. So Hagerty has some sub-consultants out there as well. It, I think, could benefit you to give them access to your home, because that saves a step for us. Same process that we're gonna go through. So if they ask for access to your home, I find no compelling reason not to provide that. But it doesn't mean you have to be home when they're out doing that assessment, and they can notice whether or not they gained access, and that will inform us as to whether or not we'll have to do that.
Okay, thank you. And
You're
my
welcome.
observation was to his question, you guys have all the data, the numbers. You get all the permits for the last 2 years, you average it out, and that's what, so then there's no ambiguity. That's what you're looking for. I know it's extra work, but that's a way to save everybody a lot of work.
Yes, we do have that history, and we have that at our fingertips that we can easily pull out. So
And share it. That's what I'm saying, share the
yep,
average.
it's all public record. So
And that helps us be smart consumers too, because if our contractor is really low balling or high balling, you're like, there's red flag.
I've been showing favoritism to this side, so I'm gonna jump over here. Yes.
I apologize for the redundant question, but just for clarity, if I hire a subcontractor, both the 10% line and the 20% line are required, correct? One is for overage and one is for profit, as I understand it. Is that correct?
Yes, so if you're the homeowner acting as the contractor, yeah, that is required. But just like was stated earlier, if your contractor breaks it down and shows the profit separately and you display it that way, that's perfectly
No,
fine.
if I hire a contractor and he does break it down, so on the itemization of materials, that's just net cost. Both the 10% line and the 20% line required, or just one of them?
So you hire a contractor to do everything?
Yeah, we can't do anything.
So.
So we're just hiring a contractor.
Yeah.
Make it easy.
It'd be that much easier for you.
But
Yeah, they
is the
don't.
10% line or the 20% line required? That's what I'm trying to get through.
If your contractor is doing the permit, the only thing that you're required, that he will put then, you'll see there's a line item that says overage, 10% overage, and they will factor that into their price. If you do the work yourself, if you pull the permit yourself, right? You pull the permit yourself, and you are going to do 100% of the work yourself. You're going to add 20% for labor, profit, whatever it is, plus 10% for the overage. If you're gonna pull the permit yourself, but let's say you're gonna have a licensed electrician do the electrical work, right? I can do most anything in my house, plumbing except for electrical, so I have to hire an electrician. I'm gonna pull my own permits. I'm gonna get the bid from the electrician. It's gonna say $1,000, right? I'm gonna make sure that he breaks down that bid when he gives it to me. It's gonna say $800 for labor materials, $200 for overhead profit, right? When I put that on the application, I'm gonna break it down exactly like that, and then you do not have to add the 20% for his work. You're still gonna add the 20% for the drywall and kitchen cabinets you're doing yourself.
Right.
Yes. I'm still a little bit confused about who the inspectors are. Because you said we have city inspectors. So someone has to do pre-inspection. A city inspector can do
So
it?
we have inspectors that we're procuring through Joe Payne and other organizations. They're not employees. And then I
Okay.
have 6 more coming to us, will be with us for through the end of March. And those folks will be working out of our offices as well. Right now, what we have going on in the community is the county has procured Haggerty and subcontracted through Tidal Basin and others, the substantial damage assessment. So the purpose behind that is countywide, there's over 26,000 structures that have received major or catastrophic damage. Though that's the focus of those assessment efforts. It is required that we complete all of those assessments within a period of time. So the county has hired a large contracting firm to be deployed. So we know we have up to 24 people in our community that have been contracted by the county to do those assessments. Those letters should be issued, what we're hoping is by the end of November, meaning we will get the data back from their work that they're conducting, and that will give you an indication of whether or not you've been determined to be substantially damaged. So when we started this presentation tonight, what I said is there are some things you can do now because knowledge is power, right? Get your FEMA letter, consider a structure, an appraiser for the structure. Get your FEMA packet in, talk to your contractors, know what your costs are going to be. All of that is really important information because if you get a substantial damage determination, you then have to determine whether or not you're going to try to appeal that decision, right? I've got information that tells me, you tell me I'm substantially damaged, but I've got information from my FEMA packet and from an appraisal that tells me that I'm below that 50% threshold. You've already done that work. So while we're waiting on information to come to us from the county's efforts, it's super important to go out there and get as much of this done as you possibly can. That's the quickest pathway to recovery, is you've got that information to either defend and appeal, or you'll know if you're not substantially damaged through that assessment process or through your own homework, you can move straight to permit.
But does it mean you cannot make decision on our permit until that process?
The
is
alternative
done?
process is you fill out that FEMA packet. If you don't wish to wait till the end of November, and I can certainly understand why, when you fill out that FEMA packet, request an inspection, will get you on with our team to get those inspections scheduled, but we need that FEMA packet first.
So,
And
so if an inspector says you're substantially damaged, that's when you need the FEMA packet.
You need the FEMA packet anyway. FEMA requires us to have that.
Okay.
Yes.
So just like when you did your renovations
Yeah.
before, you filled out the FEMA packet, that's,
But I didn't have a pre-inspection.
right, it wasn't needed.
It wasn't damaged.
So the pre-inspection is simply,
Okay.
so every structure that was damaged is getting a substantial damage inspection. And then each FEMA package tests for whether it's hit that 50% mark, that's all that is.
So they're estimating that it's gonna be over 50% before I fill out the FEMA packet. I mean, it's like two separate things, right?
They have a piece of software that they're plugging information into. And when they plug it in, they'll say how much water got into the house and if they observe any other damages, if there's a wall collapsed or, they're looking at all these variables, they're plugging it into the software. And then they're plugging in the valuation that they would get from the county's website, the property appraiser's website. And then they're doing, the system is doing that calculation to make that determination. So if it is deemed substantial, if it hits that 50% or more, then that's where you would come in and you can have an appraisal, licensed appraiser, appraise your home and give all that details in there. There's an appeals process.
But this guy came and I thought he was, okay, I had applied for FEMA disaster assistance, which I thought was totally separate from all this.
It is.
It is.
So there's, you're looking at, we need to use different language, right? Inspectors are at the city, they inspect the work that you're doing.
Okay.
The
Even
assessor-
Haggerty and,
Haggerty is doing an assessment. They're doing an assessment whether they believe your property was substantially damaged or not. The rule of thumb is, if you had more than 18 inches, assume you're gonna be declared substantially damaged. Because
who
once
was
it gets.
this other inspector?
What other inspector?
The
So
one-
that's
the
if you
FEMA
apply for
inspector.
FEMA disaster relief,
Okay,
and they send somebody to your house to see what kind of damage you have, so they can determine what kind of assistance they're going to provide.
so it has nothing to
Has
do
nothing
with
to do with
any of
this.
it. It's just about whether they're gonna give you money or not.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
The lady in the back has been waiting for a long time.
Questions. One, I recently did a remodel of my home. Closed the permit December of less than 10 months ago. Now I've had substantial damage. Am I not allowed to do improvements to my home if I've already used the 50% just to make my home, because I just recently purchased it?
So if with the look back, and that look back is in flux right now and how that's gonna go forward. But currently, the way it works is we have that 5-year look back, which started in July of 2021. If including the improvements that have been done, when you add in the damages, if it hits that 50% threshold, then it's considered substantially damaged, and now you have to figure out what you're doing. Are you gonna elevate or vacate the bottom floor and build up, or?
Okay, so that's my next question. I think what I'm gonna have to do, because I just did improvements to my home just because I wanted to make it mine, not because there was any damage, full permit, you do the work and you don't realize that you're gonna have substantial damage and that I didn't know about this rule. So I have a first and second story home. So what I think I wanna do is my living room is now a garage, because then I'll be at 14, I'll be at 16 feet. So if I go up, do I even have to fill out this FEMA package?
You do not. So if you intend to become floodplain compliant, so you're abandoning your ground level, right? That which is which is below base flood elevation +1. So if you're abandoning that ground floor, you can build on top. You already have a second story, so
Build back or on
you may, yeah, substantial improvement. I don't know what you've done to your property, obviously, but substantial improvement in our current look back does have several exemptions. So if you've done any hardening activities, impact windows, shutters, you've replaced mechanical equipment, you've re-roofed, those are some of the exemptions that would not be included in that calculation. You can also get, just a moment, you can also get an appraisal to reflect the work that you've already done. So those are the things that you can do to decrease the exposure on your substantial damage calculation is what are the exemptions that you put in, and increase your structural value through a property appraisal process. So there's a couple of things that you may wish to consider, only you know what you've done and what.
So so I had a contractor came in and he had several questions, actually. I think he emailed them to the city about how, so when you go in, it says like new construction has to have breakaway walls, you know. So I have concrete that, you know, that was brought down to the masonry block and then they reinforced it with rebar. We have the pictures and such. Do I have to demolish the house in order to put breakaway windows? Because, breakaway walls. Because when he went in and looked at it, it says breakaway walls or in some cases masonry block. You know, how do you find out what is required actually?
Yes, so I can't answer that question because it depends on what zone you're in. If you're in a velocity zone, some of those things, the rules sort of change.
Okay.
But certainly that's something that we can look at if you wanna.
So can we make a meeting with the FEMA person in the city in order to discuss so you can make the decisions?
Yeah, in fact, there's a meeting tomorrow at the library that may be helpful to you.
Okay.
Our permit administrator, Joanne, is gonna be there as well. So 10:30 to 2 p.m. at the library. There's gonna be several FEMA people there as well. So a number of opportunities to get additional information tomorrow.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Gentleman in the back.
As many people are in here, everyone walks away is about questions being answered. If you're hiring all these inspectors, why don't you just put one in each voting zone? And you can go down and sit with that one person who's covering your area. I don't have time to sit and wait for some guy who I don't know who he is to walk up and go to my house. Why don't we, if you're hiring these people, why don't we have them sit in a location? You live on Bella Vista, you go to one place. You live on Beatty, you go to that place. Make an appointment with him, he can go look at your house and you're not sitting around waiting. I just haven't really got the question answered.
Everybody needs them, so why not just have it scheduled? You know you need to hit every property that was wet, no matter what, so.
Right. So that is the work that the county is doing right now through Haggerty and their sub-consultants. That is occurring right now. So you're probably already seeing them out in the streets.
And if you push the button on here, it'll go to City of St. Pete Beach, one of your.
If you, if you've completed your FEMA packet and you wish to be inspected before the county completes their work and you get a letter.
Now, you guys were talking about maybe rolling back that 5-year look back, because that was a self-inflicted burden that was put on all of the residents here. Nobody else has it. There's only one other city that has it, and it's only a 1 year. So it really hurts us.
Well, that's not quite true. There are others that have tenure and
Not in this county.
Yes, there is. Tarpon Springs has even longer.
Okay.
So back to 1987, and there are others that do. So I don't wish to argue with you, but facts matter, right? I think there are a lot of reasons that communities consider different look back periods. It comes down to the community rating system. We're at a class 6. City of Clearwater is at a class 4, which is even more stringent. So please understand that these are processes that are vetted through a public process and considered by this commission for their vote. Those votes took place previously, long before this storm.
I watched it
Right.
2 or 3 years ago, but it didn't have to be done. It could have been left where it was. It wasn't mandated.
You're correct that it could have been. We brought forward another one in December for consideration. It ended up passing on first reading and was tabled for a number of reasons. We're now taking another look at that, certainly. And that's up for discussion again on November 19th at the next commission meeting. They have 2 options that they wish to have further discussion about, and they'll be making a decision. I believe that's the intent on that evening on the 19th. To perhaps, now keeping in mind, if you watched the meeting the other night, this is predicated on whether or not Florida Department of Emergency Management will authorize those changes, and FEMA may choose to evaluate that as well. So if we don't have answers that we need from state and perhaps federal government, we cannot bring it back for consideration on the 19th. Right now, we're intending to do so, but other agencies, as we've been talking, unfortunately make some rules that we have to abide.
Lawyers, so I think they should be able to make a good argument on looking at the people around us and maybe justifying that this place right next door has 1 year, this place has none. And yet Tarpon Springs is up quite a ways. And I see that's an argument, but I think somebody can make a good argument. I hope they do.
I understand.
Yeah.
You know, we have mutual interests. Yes.
Ma'am, then George.
If we change our look back period, and somebody's already completed their FEMA package, and maybe they put something in there that might, when you look back, how this comes out, would they be able to go back and change that, like something that wasn't answered, okay, their air conditioning was working fine, and they went ahead and put it in, but based on the outcome of the look back, would they be able to go back and do that?
So you're talking about if you apply for permitting and then the look back period changes,
Yeah,
then the thing.
because the criteria is different for all these options, right?
Right, yeah, so it would be reevaluated.
But they, you say reevaluated, they could make those changes then.
Yeah, whatever the changes are made, then we would reevaluate under the new changes. So hypothetically, if it went to a zero look back and you had permits previously that are closed out, then those wouldn't count. It would be on a permit by permit basis. But if there was a 1 year look back and I think there were some exceptions, exemptions included in the 1 year that was proposed. So those exemptions wouldn't apply, but other improvements would. So it just depends upon what is adopted, and with that adoption, we'll base the reviews on that.
And realistically, the decisions can be made before your permit gets approved.
Yeah.
So, George?
I'm just trying to understand why the city, or is the city actually processing any permit requests for hurricane repairs right now? First of all,
Yes.
and, okay, so you are, and y'all are approving some. For example, if you had, damages to your house but under the most, stringent requirement, the 5-year look back, you're fine under the 5-year look back. And then if you've got, damages, you're fine under the 50% rule based on the county's assessment. And all these things you're checking the boxes for, you're not waiting for this letter from the county. Or
No. So that's where we come in. So we don't want to hold things back any more than we have to. So in that scenario, if I get a permit application and all the paperwork's in order, everything looks good, the only thing that's missing is that substantial damage estimate. I'm sending somebody out to go do that, and we're inputting it.
Okay.
So we're not.
Yeah, because that letter, I mean, everybody's substantially damaged. There's, 800 houses.
Yeah, there's a huge variable from house to house, but yeah, we're not holding people back from that. We're doing that. But please be patient with us because we're very short staffed.
I understand that. I just want to make sure it's moving and not just everybody sitting waiting to get it.
It is moving, but just remember, this is a catastrophe. We haven't seen in over 100 years, and we're doing the best we can.
Down in the blue shirt.
So, question specific for us on the FEMA package, we have a bathroom remodeling process that we permits for in September. It was partially done, but not only just stripped down the walls and the drywall put back in. So first question is, do we list that value of that permit on the FEMA package we submit for our reconstruction here for the damage? And the second one is, it was just a different contractor than we use for demo contract for the house. It's an open permit, can we just bring them back in and finish off that bathroom without having some kind of inspection?
So, yeah, you said it's still an open permit, the work is still going on?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that would be considered, we'll see the history, so we'll know what the values are there.
Right.
So you don't have to include that in the FEMA packet, because probably when you did that, your contractor filled out your FEMA packet for that. So we have that piece of the puzzle with the permit for the damages, create a FEMA packet for that. We'll evaluate both of them.
Both of them have to go to the total.
You don't have to add the two together because we'll see the permit in there and we'll look at the history. So you don't have to add the two together.
For our own calculations.
Oh.
For our own calculations, make sure.
Yes.
We're not going over 50%.
I'm sorry. Yes, I missed that.
That permit plus the new.
Look at both of you know where you're at.
Okay, we have 4 people that had their hands up previously. I'm gonna call on you for random sequence. And then that will be the end of tonight. Now, tomorrow, we will be at the library from 10:30 until 2 o'clock with a lot of our staff, specifically so that we can address your unique questions. The gentleman with the Puma baseball cap.
I'm Mark Leward, I'm the Alliance Holders, I'm a general contractor licensed here in the state of Florida. And I've been listening to all of this and everyone's concerns, and I guess my question to you is if these great people
call a general contractor to come out and do the work for them. The question is, you know, we have architects on staff to be able to raise property and abandon the first level. We do that so we can do that work in-house. We also do these forms for every single day for all the different jurisdictions. So these people hire a general contractor to do this work. This is all moot point, right? I could actually do, and our team can actually do the inspection on the dwellings, right? And sign it with the license in the state. We don't need to have an inspector who doesn't have a license inspected, right?
So you said in these instances where you're elevating,
Well, not just that, but just say like a substantially damaged property, like they can call a general contractor and just like we can do the mitigation, we can do everything. Why wouldn't we be able to inspect their property and give them a clean bill of health, like, yeah, your roof just came off, but your property's fine, and I can sign off on that, notarize it, and then.
you can do that, but it's gonna be coming from a contractor, it's gonna be a quote. You're gonna say, here's the quote for the damages that were incurred in the structure.
So I can do inspection.
You can't do the substantial.
Not the substantial damage. But again, you can do the quote, and that's, a lot of times, I shouldn't say, that, sometimes that's more refined than substantial damage inspection. Because you're gonna look at everything, you're gonna look at all the materials, all the labor, you're gonna have a pretty good picture of what it's gonna take to restore the structure.
For these folks to hire a general contractor with this kind of condition to be able to provide these forms, they don't do anything turnkey. They just get with their local general contractor, they can have, you don't have to worry about 10%, 20% profit overhead, we take care of all of that. And I just want to make that clear because, you know, we have architect on staff and the architect has a license, you know, what I'm saying is these people are professionals and we're submitting to be reviewed by other professionals. They can just like relax, go on vacation, take a cruise, come back and the house is done.
I think part of the problem is.
I'm sure they're not happy. Find a good one who's not.
So look, if this contractor submitted to, with his packet, all the photos of the damage and all of those things, would an inspection still be required prior to issuing permits if he's doing all of that legwork?
Yeah, we would still make a.
In the back?
I was just curious, and thank you for everything that you guys are doing. It's just been a confusing process, but got it on the FEMA packet, all the due diligence to get done up front. Sounds like that 18 inches of water is gonna dictate a substantial damage letter. Most of us in the room had 5 feet of water in the house. So what is the process? I'm assuming it's an appeal with, this is what you're saying, here's an appeal, here's my letter, here's all my contracting, whatever. What's the process or how long does it take for that, if that's the direction?
So when you get that letter that says the structure's been substantially damaged, it's gonna outline on it that there's no, you can appeal it. And part of what that appeal process is getting somebody like this gentleman here, a contractor, in to create a detailed cost breakdown of what it's going to take to restore the structure.
But if we
And then-
document that all up front in the FEMA letter, does that help?
Yes, because that gives us a better picture.
And if I decide to elevate or tear down and rebuild, it doesn't matter.
Correct.
Correct, yeah, whichever option you choose, if you take that structure and you make it conforming to the regulations, whether it's building it up or whatever, then yeah, it's compliant and you don't have to worry about 50%.
Okay, thank you.
We have a gentleman in the back and then our last question.
So if I do a homeowner permit, right, we start that process because apparently we can kind of get the stages working and maybe get an approval in like a few days, not a few days, but hypothetically saying, right? You guys come out, you do the thing and stuff, and I'm under my numbers because I got an appraisal, we're good, right? I have a lot to work with. But you know, as I'm doing this and I'm putting that paperwork forward while you guys review, I'm also talking about looking at elevation, If I choose to go this route of tear down and rebuild, and I already have a permit going forward, and say you guys approved it, how is that gonna affect that? Do you guys just like null and void that permit and we're good and?
Well, presumably the permit is for ground floor structure that you currently have. If you decide to elevate it, that permit is invalid. Right, so yes, that permit ends, you end up closing that permit and you get all new permits because it's a completely different structure now because it's
If I
elevated.
make that decision.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tear down and build, I don't really wanna mess with this, I can financially do this, just call you guys and say, just pull my permit, cause a builder's gonna come take it.
In that scenario, you can send us an email and say, I want to rescind my permit application for permit number such and such with such and such address. And then we'll void it out and then you can move forward with your other permit. And actually, you could have both permits in at the same time, and then, you know, the other one, just let us know whenever, and we'll void that previous permit. That's not a problem.
This gentleman right here.
Yeah, it's piggybacking on this, partially answered on hers. So we get the substantial damage letter, which I'm anticipating getting. That appeal process is partly the FEMA packet. Can I do that on my own, or do I then have to bring in a general contractor in that appeal process to appeal that substantial damage with my appraisal? I've already got my appraisal, so I've done that, got my appraisal in hand, and have quite a bit of movement. So I get the substantial damage. I've already filled out my FEMA packet. I'm kind of waiting. So I get the substantial damage. Then what's my next step? Do I have to call a GC, or can I give you my estimation?
If you can justify the pricing and that it's market value, that's all that's required. So, Florida statute that contractors are licensed under, it says all work shall be done by a licensed contractor. It gives some exceptions. One of those exceptions is a homeowner can act as a contractor. So in essence, you're acting as a contractor. So
The appeal process.
right, but I'm just saying, so you don't have to hire a contractor as a homeowner. You can act as the contractor. You just may have to justify the numbers and give a more refined cost breakdown of.
Have a more refined cost breakdown for the appeal.
Right, and
side.
it may also require an updated appraisal if you don't have one already.
I've already got that. And then kind of part B to my question, these letters are gonna be going out certified mail to a lot of vacant homes. Can the city, when those letters do go out, use the text feature or something just to say, hey, the letters went out, because you did say we can call and get it, we can come in and get it, but just to let us know, hey, those letters went out, come get yours at the city or request it, because they're certified, they're gonna get returned if they're being certified. 'Cause
Yeah,
most of
yeah.
them-
It's certainly a great point. Mark, we're writing that down. We'll do that. Yeah, it's a great idea. Love it. We'll do that.
We can
Yeah.
then say, hey, cool.
Yeah. And we'll send that, we'll get that, if you're not signed up, please do sign up for those kinds of communications, so we can push those out. Those letters are gonna be attached to your address in our permit system. So if you don't receive it, you can call in and request that, and we can send it to you, and best way for you to receive it, email, smoke signal.
I
Stop it,
suggest
yeah.
you do that too for these meetings, they push notifications, because they're really not advertised much that these are here. You get a lot more attendance, a lot more people would benefit. It's hard to find that these meetings actually are going to occur. You used to do push notifications before the hurricane, you've got people's addresses or text numbers. Push out that these meetings are going to happen, so more people can benefit.
Thank you. We'll write that down as well.
Yeah, related to that.
All right, so thank you everyone for coming. I have one piece of information that might help you.
Very nice to meet you. Appreciate your knowledge.
For those of you applying for permits, if you missed the commission meeting on Monday, we are waiving all storm-related permit fees. January 14th. So get your applications in before then.
Thank you.